just checking to see how fine the reproduction is on these duplicate negatives. We made a number of duplicate negatives of number 1103 just to make sure we had something in case we had an accident somewhere and lost the original. Trucks, cars, trains, smoke, airplanes, theaters, people, bicycles, everything. Nothing left without something in the film. It just happened that everything came together like that. It was part of doing the job. And this one here, this litho negative is number 1, the first night picture I made on Norfolk and Western in January of 1955. And then checking it, in spite of all the change in the equipment and that I developed over the years, the negative is excellent. But the picture is nice, it's a good picture.
Winston links photographs of the Norfolk and Western Railroad, taken in the late 50s, at night and in action, portray the last days of steam locomotion in America. They place the drama of steam in the context of everyday life along the track, and with their surreal lighting and composition, they are now acknowledged as the greatest photographs of steam trains ever taken.
I could photograph anything I could think of. There wasn't anything that I could see that I wanted to photograph that I couldn't, regardless of size. So it was a great experience, and it was a lot of fun. It was a tremendous amount of fun, but I never got paid for it, and I didn't want to. I didn't care. I was just getting the photographs. But I knew there were a lot of things there that had to be done, and did it.
Starting off in the Shenandoah Valley, Link was to spend 6 years documenting the passing of steam, filming it, photographing it, and recording its sounds.
So where are we now, Winston?
We're coming to Thaxton. I'm following the timetable from December 1958. This is train number 85 westbound, and we're heading towards Roanoke. We're about to attack the Blue Ridge grade, and we're on top of the train and making a film with the cinders and the smoke and everything in my face. The purpose of the whole project was to preserve a beautiful era of America, to show the people and the way the railroad and the people interacted with the railroad, and to show the last of the steam locomotives in a dramatic situation. You couldn't control the sunlight in the daytime. You couldn't get what you wanted, but at night you could, and that's why we did it at night. It was tough, but it worked out very well. Pictures for, I guess, 30 years in a vault. Kept the negatives in the vault. Didn't use very many of them at all, but I got busy making sound recordings. Then the pictures stayed in. The only thing that's been laid up longer and held off from the public were the Dead Sea Scrolls. They kept them hidden for 42 years, where my pictures were held for 30 years. So they had me beat by 12 years.
Ogle Winston Link was born in Brooklyn in 1914 and took an early interest in photography, encouraged by his father, who taught woodwork in the local school. Early on, he became fascinated with the sensuous beauty of machines. Indeed, he still drives a 1931 Ford Model A.
I must have been 14 or 15 when I started taking pictures of trains. Friends would go over to Communipore over in Jersey City, and we'd photograph the trains over there. Jersey Central came in there with big engines, mainly the Blue Comet. And Reading Railroad came in, the B&O came in with big, beautiful President-type engines. They were gold trim and olive green. Boy, they were gorgeous. But the Blue Comet was the prettiest of them all. The engine was all blue. And satin chrome is a masterpiece.
What is it about steam engines that you find so romantic?
I guess it's because of the places they go. They're always going to through some mountains, and through the valleys, and through rivers and forests, and it's always country. And I haven't lived in New York City. I lived not in Manhattan, but in Brooklyn, where you didn't have anything like that. So it was always great to get on a train and take a long trip. I suppose that's part of it, and it's the sounds that it makes, the smells that it has, and it has a bell in it. It has air pumps, and it has valves that are releasing shots of steam every now and then. And it has a turbo which has a whine to it. And it has a beautiful whistle. All the steam engines had different whistles. All they had the different characteristics and different sounds. And they had smells from hot grease and oil, and the smell of coal smoke. The soft coal has a nice smell to it, as long as you don't get it blasted in the face. It's only a little far away from it, it's okay. But it's things like that, and the sound of the wheels, the sound of the drivers. You can tell exactly what's happening to the engine and how fast it's going. If the rods are loose, it makes different sounds. So it has all characteristics. The diesel engine is great, it's very efficient, and nothing like them, but they'll never replace a steam engine.
Link's photographs of steam trains by night combine technical know-how and aesthetic instinct and succeed in capturing the end of an era.
At the end of the era of steam, it's around 1959, 1960, I saw all Norfolk and Western engines being cut up. And I appealed to them to save two of each, and it fell on deaf ears. I went to the big stockholders and tried to get them to spend the money and fix up a roundhouse for these engines. They wouldn't do it. Every railroad in the United States was cutting up their engine and sending them to Japan to make automobiles. So I figured there has to be one, and I happened to be traveling up in Montreal one day with some the board of directors of Texaco, and I saw one of these engines out in the yard, and I fell in love with it.
Link bought his own steam engine in 1960, a Canadian Pacific D4G 10-wheeler built in 1911, and he spent the last 30 years restoring it. Now arriving at Rome Locomotive Works in upstate New York, work will begin shortly on the final phase of its restoration.
Next time it moves, there's going to be smoke coming out of it, and exhaust, and a whistle, and bell going. It's going to be alive.
For this film, Link agreed to do one last synchronized flash photograph, a self-portrait in front of his own steam engine. He was helped by Tom Garver, who accompanied Link as a photographic assistant on 3 expeditions to Virginia in the 50s, and who was later, as a museum curator, able to champion his work.
But we'll tilt it this way. We'll keep the light off the ground.
So you'll get the maximum light out here on
We
this.
can't do anything that we didn't do before, you know. So we got to do the same, everything the same way, same limitations.
Okay.
We can't go into all this expensive new equipment everybody's got. Got to be slobs. Until I started on that project, I had worked as a professional photographer for a big public relations firm called Bayer and Associates in Manhattan. And I had learned a lot about photography and a lot about what it took to make a photograph. As they said, that we want to wow the picture editor. Also, I had developed certain techniques which could be explored.
Winston Link originally studied civil engineering at the Polytechnic Institute of Brooklyn and worked during the war on countermeasures for guided missiles. When he set up as a professional photographer after the war, he specialized in demanding technical assignments such as a Scorpion jet taking off at 250 miles an hour. So by the mid-50s, he was uniquely qualified and technically prepared to take on the challenge of photographing steam trains in action at night.
I'll have to let the mice out of this thing.
You want a hand, Winston?
No, it's all right. Boy, this back nice.
His photographs involved illuminating vast areas of night using batteries of flash bulbs linked in series.
See, we need this.
Who put this up?
He was capable of producing an explosion of light equivalent to 50,000 100-watt domestic light bulbs being turned on at the same time. As the flash bulbs then burnt out, he had only one chance to capture each fleeting image.
Winston's spirit so imbued the project that it was never really work. It was such a pleasure, and there was also that kind of tingle that you know, this was high adventure, and you know, you had to get it. I mean, there were times when we'd just be absolutely exhausted, you know, and the trains, we'd be waiting for a train. I remember once we arrived at a place to tape record in this case. We got there at 6 and discovered that the train had left at 5. We got there the next day at 5 and discovered it had left at 4. We got there at 4, and that time it didn't come until midnight. So we sat there and waited and talked about what we were doing and about life and how it was changing and many of the wonderful verities of architecture and construction and the quality of things, how they were disappearing. So there was this great intense spirit to really document and record this, to capture it. I think what I didn't realize is how much we were capturing a whole way of life that was disappearing. Not only steam locomotives versus diesel locomotives, but this isolated, small town, individualized kind of America that was vanishing.
The Norfolk and Western was the last steam-powered Class 1 line in America. Centered on Roanoke, it had evolved over 120 years into 5 divisions. Though its engines were the peak of steam locomotive engineering in the United States, within months of Link's beginning his epic project, the change to diesel engines had begun.
I wrote to the Norfolk and Western to see what kind of an arrangement I could make with them. All I wanted was their permission to go on their property and be left alone. And it wasn't going to cost them anything. So they agreed to it. I told them it would take me 5 years. And it took 6. But then I ran out of steam engines, so I had to stop. But I still would have liked to have had a couple of more years, but we did pretty well.
Link's evocative film footage of steam is seen here for the first time.
The steam locomotive was very labor-intensive. It commanded an army of men to clamber over, under, on, or about it. Diesel fuel was 10 cents a gallon back in those days. Component parts were very hard to get, and coal declined as the major fuel. Just a multitude of several factors that eventually caused the locomotive to decline and the diesel to be more economical to use. The steam era Norfolk and Western, back in those days, the 1950s, there were approximately 6,000 workers employed by the railroad in Roanoke. Back in the 1950s, Roanoke had approximately 6,000 N&W employees. It was a very vibrant city. It was the headquarters of the railroad. There were 5 routes that fed into the Schaefer's Crossing classification terminal. The East End shops were just finishing up building 447 locomotives for the railroad down through the years. The passenger station was alive with approximately 24 trains a day. The people were very much aware of what their company meant to the area. The N&W referred to its 6-state area as the land of plenty, and people were very proud to work for the railroad.
Link travelled the entire network on both sides of the train, looking for interesting locations and artifacts which he could use in his attempt to capture the essence of small-town America and the life of the people along the track. He would then correspond with the people involved months in advance of an expedition.
This letter is dated July 17th, 1956. It's to Edgar W. Austin, Vesuvius, Virginia. Dear Mr. Austin, for about 2 years I've been making photographs along the N&W at night. I have noticed the Amoco pump next to your store and would like to make a shot including this pump with gas in the reservoir draining into a fairly up-to-date car.
Yes, sir, I remember him.
What happened?
Oh, he had cameras set up in that store there everywhere. And he, of course, I don't know how he did it, but he had it fixed so he could film the whole steam engine when it came up through here. In fact, I don't know, you probably got pictures of it, haven't you?
I would like to get a nice-looking young couple in my car to pose as models, for which I pay a small fee. Do you know 2 people who would do this? Or do you know a real character with a very old car we could use? The picture will be made as the train passes. Many thanks for any cooperation you give us. I'm not being paid by anyone to shoot these pictures. I'm doing it to have a record of America's last steam-powered railroad before the N&W goes to diesel. Very truly yours, O. Winston Link.
As well as I remember, I kind of wandered into the store, and Mr. Link was here taking pictures, and he asked me if I'd like to be in the picture. And he also asked me if I had a girlfriend, and I said yes, and he asked if I'd go get her to be in the pictures. But a year after this, we got married. The night train was most of the teenagers' curfew here in Vesuvius. When that passenger train went through, you were supposed to go home.
It seemed like that night that it just took a long time to get it done, but we enjoyed doing it very much. And then, as he said, a year later we were married. I have been married now for 32 years.
He also took photographs in Edgar Austin's general store.
This is my wife and me, and Mr. Miller, of course, is dead. Mr. Graves over there is dead. Junior Campbell, he's still living. He's around here someplace. He's the boy standing there at the scales. I don't know what in the world made my hair turn different color from what that is. Yes, sir, I remember.
Across the tracks from the gravity feed pump is the new general store, which is also the post office.
I bought the store back in 1946, married Irene in 1949, and we've lived here all our life, enjoyed every minute of it. We used to put a mail on the train, number 2 at night at 8 o'clock at night, be in New York City next morning at 8 o'clock. That was a good mail service back in those days. 225 people live here in the area now. We have a lot of people live in the rural area, and they commute back and forth to town for their jobs in factories and so forth, construction work.
Winston,
Yes,
how do you feel about being back here?
how do I feel about being back here? I haven't been back here long enough to find out.
Well, we'll just keep you for a week or two.
Well, I sure would like to stay. I've often thought of this place and how secluded it is and private and how beautiful. I've always loved it.
I almost cried when the steam engines quit. That really broke my heart when I saw those steam engines, the last one go by. I mean, that was, you know, serious thing. We lost our country, whatever you might call it, our country business then. It turned into something more modern. And we wanted to keep everything back countrified as we could.
We enjoyed the steam trains. They made a lot of noise, and but you could hear them way down the track, coming up, puffing and blowing, and puffing and blowing.
I lived far enough away, the cinders did not bother me. But the other ladies that lived closer to the tracks would always run out and get their white clothes in because the cinders made them black. You'd walk out, your head would be full of cinders.
How does it feel under there? Just like the old days?
Pretty much.
Good.
Not bad, Haskell.
Haskell. Remember my middle name, Winston?
Haskell.
Haskell, I know, right.
I forget what you're up to.
So is it going to work?
Of course it's going to work. It'll work. Don't worry about it. I tested it on the synchronization on all the shutters I have here, and they all read excellent. All read good. Power supply is okay. All the wires are okay. And I don't know of anything they don't know anything to expect that give us any trouble. The bulbs are old. Some of the bulbs are 30 years old. We can't get replacements on them. And once they're shot, that's the end of them. We have enough to squeeze by here, and that's about it. That would be the end of it. We'll save a couple for freaks for museum pieces, but outside of that, there won't be any left. We're using them all. All right, I'll try shooting it of myself. I'll get there, Haskell.
All right, you want to come over here?
Yeah, stay there for a second. We're going to get the film in.
Until his photographic work was rediscovered, Link was better known for his sound recordings. The most famous of these was made at Rural Retreat, at the same time as he took one of his classic photographs.
December 27th, 1957. Recording made by Roy Zyder, that's my nephew. The night was clear, not quite freezing. The train was number 42 from New Orleans, and it stopped and then let off a couple of people and went on. We came into a rural retreat one afternoon and heard chimes being played on the church bells. And it was just before Christmas, day before Christmas. I found out where the chimes were coming from, so we found out who she was, and we went to see her, and we told her that we would like to have her start playing the chimes at 25 minutes before a train arrived, and to continue playing until we came down and told her to stop, but not to stop playing under any condition. So she started, and then we were able to pick up the sound of the train in the far distance, whistling for distant crossings. And then the train came in. The train stopped, the trains came back on because she kept playing. The train went away for, I guess, 20 miles or so before we went down and told her to stop playing. And it was a beautiful recording. She only made one mistake. She hit one wrong, but that was all right. That makes it legitimate. It's good. She's a great lady.
So you took pictures of trains then, did you?
Pictures of trains. I took pictures of trains in action at night and tried to work people into it, so you get the connection between the railroad and the people that worked there and lived around the tracks and then the cities and towns that the trains went through. So he tied it all together to give it a pretty good image of American life along the railroad at that time. That's what we call Ghost Town. It was made in Stanley, Virginia, in January of 1957.
You don't remember this telephone booth?
I do. You want us to say what these are?
Yeah.
We know. This was a grocery store. This was a drugstore. This was another restaurant. This was a funeral home, and this here was a...
Post office?
No, hardware store first.
Oh, okay, I don't
And
remember
post
that.
office, and then a $5 to a $1 store.
Town was dead. It just was quiet. After 7 o'clock, nothing happened, so we set this up. We called it Ghost Town.
We weren't allowed on over in town but an hour or so after dark because, you know, it's just so many people. But before I was married now, I'm saying. And Daddy'd take us back home. Of course, we lived just across the track. Just a place to have a good time.
Yeah.
And now we have nothing, you know, to make anyone stay. But you couldn't back then walk up and down the street because it was a booming little place, wasn't it?
My boyfriend used to ride from Shenandoah to Stanley at the train.
I used to go from Stanley to Luray, which is only about 7 miles.
And I went clear to Hagerstown and got married on the train.
They didn't quit him soon enough, did they?
No.
you do, sir? How you day? Tim Hensley. Nice to meet you. What's your name?
College.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Come around anytime. I'm here all the time.
Is that right? That looks like an old company dwelling house, an old section foreman's house. Is that what that is? The old company architecture and whatever? How many years did you put in with the railroad?
49 years and a half.
Is that right? What's it like living along the railroad here? Do you still look out for the trains and whatever?
Yeah, I watch trains.
Do you watch them by? And,
I watch trains by. I sit out here anywhere from 11 to 12 o'clock at night. Watch trains go by and chew them with the backer.
Is that right? Did you like the steam engine better than the diesel?
Yeah, I do. Yes, sir, I like that steam engine.
What was the difference in them? Did you think the diesel was a good engine, or?
Yeah, it's a good engine. But that oil, I don't like that oil stuff.
Much has changed since Link's time. The N&W merged with the Southern Railway in 1982 to form the massive Norfolk Southern Corporation with its 17,000 miles of track across 20 states. But back in the 1950s, here at Bluefield, West Virginia, Link spent time in the engine service building photographing the laborers who toiled on the giant steam engines.
This is a picture of Mr. Hayden, whose job was to grease locomotives when they came in from a run. Run would be maybe 100 miles or more, but not much more than 100. And they ran these locomotives through the lube bay, ran them through, I think, in just 25 or 30 minutes and gave them a complete grease job. That picture was made in Bluefield, West Virginia.
Well, my name is James O. Hayden. I worked on the N&W Railroad for 42 years. I missed 2 days out of 42 years. One day when my mother died and one day when my dad died. Now, anytime a black man was hired on the railroad at this particular time, whatever you were hired at, that's what you retired or died at. Wasn't no promotions or anything like that. It's just more or less the way they had it set up, which I don't hold against the railroad. Finally, things broke loose and started promoting fellows and whatnot. The master mechanic told me that as long as I was black, I'd never get a job doing machines work. So they had the discrimination suit here, and I turned my case in with the discrimination suit, and which I won the case, and also got the job. And right now, I mean, birds, rabbits, chickens, doves, pigeons, and raise them, sell them, and whatnot. I took up about that when I was retired from the railroad.
Having photographed most of the railroad at night for 5 years, there was one branch line running from Abingdon to West Jefferson, which he could photograph only during the day. The Abingdon line came to represent everything which he loved about these mysterious trains and the dreamlike vision of them crossing the landscape of rural America, touching the lives and culture of the people who lived along the track.
This was a rugged, tough mountain railroad. It was filled with curves, mountains, steep grades, bridges, all kinds of track running right close to the rocks and the sides of the rock mountains. It was absolutely fabulous. There's just nothing like it. It had such a special meaning that I tried to buy the whole railroad when it was for sale. They only wanted $110,000 for the whole railroad from Abingdon to West Jefferson, North Carolina. It's 55 miles. I didn't have the money, but I loved it so much. I loved this area so much. I loved the railroad so much, so I wanted to preserve it. And they said, look, we know how you feel, but leave it alone. It just can't be done. No matter how much you love it, no matter how much you want it, you can't do it. Because they did not want it anymore. It was costing them so much to run. It was just too tough a thing to operate. They were running at the point where they're only running one train a week. So that's how much I love the place. And especially Green Cove. It's especially peaceful spots. One of the most beautiful spots are in Virginia, or any place I've ever known.
You see, people would line these seats every day and meet the train to get the mail. This was really a busy place, and it was a good place not only to swap yarns, but to sell some groceries and to listen to the tales of woe and their sadness and also their happy hours. There's Mr. Robert Farmer, Mr. Benton Greer, my dear sister Eleanor, and there, of course, there's the Scales where Winston was married, and Conchita. And here's my father, W.M. Buchanan. This is Carver Walls. This is Leslie Greer. This is Fay Luther and Brenda Luther. And I think this is Bolina Greer.
Where are all those people that are in here? Are they still around?
You remember Benton Greer, he's your first one.
Yeah.
He had such a tragic death.
Oh, well, we better not talk about that. Because the people up here don't die. They live here forever. They're in the photograph, you never die.
I'd like to, but oh boy, do I know they'll go. We'll all go.
Not me, not you. We're not going. I should have gone a long time ago.
In 1984, Link returned with Conchita Mendoza to this railroad depot at Green Cove, where they were married.
We got married behind that counter over there. And it wasn't a very smooth operation because the minister had somebody photographing, and I kept telling him to move out of the way and move over here and move over there, and the minister kept being interrupted all during the ceremony so we get the right angle on the photographs. It was quite an unusual type of marriage. But anyway, it worked.
I thought it was a sad time. when the old steam engine era passed, they removed the tracks, which was a sad day in our lives because we'd lived it and been a part of it. It's changed a great deal, and it's a lonely place anymore. And it's lonely, but it's beautiful, I think.
After a while, it got so there was just nothing left. And in May of 1960, they dropped the fires on the Y6, last one. No steam left.
How did you feel then?
Really bad. But I was tired. I'd been going down there for 6 years, and it was milking me. It was costing me a lot of money, and I never had any spare change. Everything I earned went to that project.
How much did the project cost?
Oh, thousands. I don't know how much. I don't keep a list of those things. I have no records of it. I don't want to know what it cost. I don't care what it cost. It got done. It was done well. I didn't cut any corners. The only place we saved money was on some of this carbon paper. That's the yellow stuff is very cheap, and if it's exposed to the air just too much, it falls apart.
O. Winston Link took his last night photograph in April 1959, but apart from illustrating his record albums, the body of work remained largely unseen until 1976.
Do you think that it would have been, he could have gained recognition earlier?
I don't think so. You see, one of the things that I think happened is that Winston came out of the grand directorial photographic tradition of the 30s, of a photograph, large camera, elaborate setups, carefully engineered, carefully established. Then in the mid and later 50s, the Leica, the candid photograph, blurred, you know, but where you knew it was really photography verite, as it were. And Winston was never very comfortable with that, and his style, of course, never really fitted into that. But then I think it took a while for again the pendulum to swing back, and for people to appreciate this, and suddenly to begin looking at something that was a remarkable artifact of the past, and also absolutely a work of art in its own right. And so that at first, steam locomotives, little towns, and so on had been so much part of our lives. I mean, they were invisible to us. Then we began to see these differently. The locomotives had disappeared, then the railroads disappeared in many cases, and then the towns disappeared. And so we suddenly were looking at a vision of America only 30 years old. You know, only 30 years old, but very different.
I want to keep it off the engine.
Okay.
Some of it will spill over to it.
What's that? All right, now I see something here I can put under it.
What do you see?
How about these 2x?
What about a piece of cotton?
A piece of cotton?
Yeah.
Yeah, you think that would hold it real good? Okay. Let's have that other one.
Okay.
All right, that's
not bad.
It seems pretty good.
Okay.
Careful, I got your tail.
All right. Are we set for the big flash over there? You're going to focus on that? All right, we're all set. Now I got to get some kind of an expression. Here we go. Oh, this ought to do it. Did that go?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you don't see it because it's too light. But everything sounded okay to me. Did you
shoot?
What?
Did you shoot?
Yes. What do you mean, did I shoot?
You
Yeah, I shot the picture.
You shot the picture?
Oh, no. I didn't pull the slide. Son of a bitch. It was almost bugs wasted.
Right.
Jesus Christ. Well, that's how it goes sometimes, folks.
Right.
Shit. I guess I do live according to my own rules. I don't break the law, but I do what I like to do. I'm willing to take chances. I'll gamble on some things I believe in, like this project and buying a locomotive and a railroad car and trying to restore it, not worrying about where it's going to go or what's going to happen. It's just have faith in myself and in the future that we can get it running. Living by my own rules, I guess I do.